Yeah, it says it's live on Facebook on my screen.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Where is it on?
Well, we're not there yet.
Yes, there it is. I see it on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah, we're
Hey.
live on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
All
now,
right. Well,
Very
good.
good.
Shall we get started?
sure.
Okay.
All right. Yay, we're live on Facebook. We made it.
All
Good
right,
evening.
everybody, we're live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our very first Friends in Fiction official book club. I'm Brenda Gardner in South Carolina, and with me, thanks to Zoom, is my co-host, Michelle Marcus in New York.
Hello.
Tonight, we're discussing Hello Summer. And what better way to do that than to have Mary Kay Andrews herself here to add her thoughts. So we're going to get into some questions in a few minutes for book club discussion, and we're going to try to pick up questions from the chat. But I'd like to first introduce Mary Kay. She's the New York Times bestselling author of 27 novels, but we know her best as one of the founding Friends in Fiction authors that have been brightening up our Wednesday nights during this pandemic. She's a native of St. Petersburg, Florida, and earned a bachelor's in journalism from the University of Georgia. Go Bulldogs!
That's right.
Even though I'm a Gamecock. After a 14-year career working as a reporter at newspapers, including the Savannah Morning News, the Marietta Journal, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, she left journalism in 1991 to write fiction. It started with mysteries, but it's no mystery how she became one of our favorite authors. So welcome tonight, Mary Kay.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for doing this. Thank you for bearing with me because I am technologically challenged.
Hey, we're all doing new things, right?
Right.
Well, I must say, Mary Kay, I got Hello Summer from one of the featured indie booksellers from our Wednesday night chats, and I thought I'd give it kind of a leisurely read. But the story just absolutely took over, and I flew straight through it. Of course, it didn't hurt that I had a journalism background, but I just loved it. Michelle?
I'm not new to your books, but this book reminded me why I enjoy reading your books. Hello Summer had the perfect mix of mystery, romance, and of course the beach.
Speaking of which, most of our people watching have probably already read Hello Summer by now, but would you mind giving us a little synopsis of the book?
I'd be happy to. Hello Summer is the story of Connolly Hawkins. She is an investigative reporter working at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which not coincidentally is the last paper that I worked at as a reporter. And the book starts with her last day at work at her going away party. And she has cut all her ties to Atlanta. She's broken up with her boyfriend, who also works in the newsroom, given up her apartment, given up her job. She's going to go to a new job at a really powerful online journalism outlet. During the going away party, she gets a text message from her older sister. And her older sister is back home in their hometown of Silver Bay, Florida. And she is running the family's really struggling weekly newspaper, the Silver Bay Beacon. And her sister sends her a link to a story online that says that the organization Connolly's about to go work at has just announced that they're shutting down. So she's out of work. She's out of a place to live. She's homeless. She's broken up with her boyfriend. She doesn't have a lot of other options. So she decides to move back home very temporarily to Silver Bay. She's going to hang out with her grandmother, Lorraine, at her grandmother's beach house and work on her tan and send out clippings and get another job. That's the plan anyway. She goes home and her grandmother immediately starts guilt tripping her into going to work for the family paper, the Beacon. And her sister, Grayson, is the publisher and the managing editor of the paper. And Grayson really doesn't want her little sister working for her. There's a lot of sibling rivalry going on. So all that's happening. And on one of her first nights home, Connolly has cabin fever. There's nothing else. There's nothing much to do in Silver Bay. They roll up the streets at 9 o'clock at night. She decides she wants to go out and get a drink, and there's no place late at night to get a drink except for the nearest juke joint, which is the American Legion bar. So she drives to the American Legion and bumps into an old friend. He's literally the boy next door. His name is Skelly. And they strike up a conversation, and the evening passes. There are some drinks. There is some trash talk. They dance to the jukebox. And then when it becomes clear at almost 3 in.the morning that she can't drive home, he insists on giving her a ride home. And on the way there, in the middle of nowhere, they come across a 1-car accident. A car is up in flames. They do what they can. They can see there's a man inside. He appears unconscious. And he does not make it. The next day, she's at her grandmother's, and word comes that the victim in the car accident is the area's longtime congressman. His name is Sims Robinette, and he has he's died in the car crash. So Connolly has a big, all of a sudden, in a town where nothing ever happens, Connolly has a big juicy story to get her teeth into, and unfortunately nobody else in town wants her asking questions, but Connolly can't not ask questions, and she can't not want to know what happened. And that's sort of how the story starts. There's some mystery, and as you said earlier, there's a little romance. Sean Kelly is newly divorced, and he's long had, carried a little bit of a flame for Connolly. And so we're going to find out what happens in Silver Bay.
Great, thanks. And that's a great summary. And I guess I'd first like to ask you, we did an advance post allowing readers to ask questions in advance. So I'm going to ask you one of those before we get started with the book club discussion. So Sherry Coon wants to know, how did your role as a journalist influence the events of your book?
Oh, well, I was able to draw on my background, but of course I haven't worked at a newspaper in close to 30 years. I left journalism in 1991. So I had to do a lot of research to find out what journalism is like today, especially at a struggling weekly. But yeah, all of that was great background for me. I remembered what life was like in a newsroom and what it was like, especially the thrill of being on a big breaking story, and the adrenaline rush of that. And that really came back to me when I was working on this book. I could totally put myself in Connolly's place, knowing that she was this close to breaking a big story, and also getting pushback from her editor and from people in the town. So it had a lot to do. My journalism background had a lot to do with the plot of this book.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely fabulous. And I'll try not to have any spoilers here, but I was especially, it just made me smile about the investigative reporting even when this major event happened to Connolly at the end of the book, her first thought is, let me call Grayson and get Michael Torpy over here and bring his best camera. I thought that was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you're a diehard journalist, and there's a story going on, that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You might have found yourself in a dangerous situation, but the first thing on your mind is, how am I going to get this story in? How's it going to play?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you had Connolly do. Amazing. Well, Michelle's going to kick us off with the first of our book club questions. And what we're going to try to do here is we're going to try and ask the readers a question, give them time to answer in the chat box, but also ask Mary Kay her thoughts on a particular aspect of that question. So let's get started with that part.
Okay, so our first question is, how do you think the sisters-parents relationship affected how they handled romantic relationships and the treatment of their partners? And how did the relationships improve throughout the book? The sisters.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. How do you think the sisters-parents relationship affected how the two sisters handled romantic relationships and the treatment of their partners?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're in a family and you're a child, you're a witness to your parents' marriage, and you might see some things they didn't intend you to see. And Conley's parents, her mother is absent. Her mother just drifts away and never comes back, and she doesn't really have a relationship with her anymore. And that, I think, Connolly thinks about that a lot, and she's distrustful of getting too deeply involved in a romantic relationship. And her sister Grayson, on the other hand, is married, and you know, may be facing some issues in her own marriage, and she's desperate to keep that private. She doesn't want anybody to know that there's trouble in her marriage. So I think each of the sisters reacts differently to their parents' very flawed marriage.
That's really interesting. Michelle, I'm going to see if you can pull up the comments because I am not able to see them.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I didn't see anyone post their thoughts on this question. Does anyone have any thoughts on this question?
I see that I can actually, for some reason, I can see the chat question. Cherie,
yes.
She says she thinks it impacted Connolly more than Grayson. And you might think that only because the story is told from Connolly's point of view.
Good point. Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have any thoughts, or should we move on to the next question?
Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. And I think that I'm going to be able to see these comments now, but we'll see how it goes. So readers, I was really curious about this one. The man in black, Buddy Bright.
Yes.
He's so mysterious. Did any of you sort of predict what kind of role he would play in the book? And did you see that he would have so many secrets? So let's see what our audience has to say. We're expecting people to be fast typists, I think, but.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit about the character of Buddy, where the inspiration for him came from. When I started my newspaper career in Savannah, there was a photographer there, and he was the inspiration for Buddy. He always dressed in black. He called himself the Man in Black. Now, he was a photographer, not a DJ, but he had a white Corvette with a working press tag on the front. And he would drive around all night, even after he got off work, taking, you know, photos of car fires or whatever was going on. And he was quite a character in Savannah, and he only died a few years ago. So he inspired the Buddy Black character. But, you know, when I was writing his character, I was thinking about, do you all remember the role of Wolfman Jack in American Graffiti? His voice came out of the car radio, and he seemed to know what was going on. And I kind of like that idea.
I wanted to share Marilyn Rump's comment here too, since, I'm sorry.
Now. That's good. Mm-hmm. You have it?
I've got it. I'm sorry. It looked like Mary Kay was speaking. Okay, Marilyn Rump says, I did think he would have secrets, but I certainly didn't think he would ride to the rescue, but it gave him a bit of redemption. And I thought that was an interesting comment about the redemption.
Yeah, I didn't really know what he showed up in the book, and I didn't know what his role would be at first, but so it was a surprise to me.
My apologies, I'm having a little bit of trouble syncing. Oh, Jim Staskowski said, so not a Johnny Cash wannabe.
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay, are there any other comments about this question from the readers?
somebody liked his car and his cats.
Oh, the cat.
Oh, I like that too, and it was so neat how he named each successive cat Hi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was adorable.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, do you have the next question?
Okay. Now, this may be a bit of a spoiler question, so you can put it on mute, and then when I'm done with the question, and go on back to Brenda, you can put it back up. Were you surprised by the end of the novel and Connolly's decision to remain in Silver Bay and make a life for herself there?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil that. I don't want to spoil the ending of the book for people. I knew how I wanted the book to end, but I didn't know how Connolly's journey would go. So that was it was as big a surprise to me as it was to the readers. Somebody asked, I can see some of the questions. Somebody asked, how does that happen that you don't know what's going to happen in a book?
That's a good question. Mm-hmm.
There are two kinds of writers. There are plotters who plot a storyboard and write a detailed outline. And then there are writers like me. I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. So I have a vague notion. I know who my characters are. I know what my protagonist issue is. And then I just start writing. I know a little bit about the character at the beginning of the book, and as I write, she reveals herself to me. And I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but that's how the process works for me.
Okay.
Oh, that doesn't sound woo-woo. That sounds exactly like the evolution of the novel. I will go back to one of the comments on Buddy Bright, though. Someone said, Linda Kitchens said, I thought he might be involved in a congressman's accident. And that's something I didn't think of when I was
I did think of it, actually.
I
did think of it, and then I decided it didn't really work. I think he starts out being curious about Connolly and watching her, and then he sees somebody else watching her. So he had more of a role than I'd originally planned for.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, speaking of, that kind of leads us right into the next question.
Well, I just want to say comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have a number of people saying that they weren't surprised that Connolly stayed in Silver Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see if there was something specifically. I do like this comment by Laura Hester. I like the seat of the pants. Keeps me on my toes. But that was cute. And this other comment by Cherie. Connolly had a great arc line. She showed a lot of emotional growth. I kind of agreed with that, so that's kind of why I shared that.
I thought that was pretty neat too, how Connolly grew and developed over the course of the novel. And that might have been a pants thing, and it might have been a plot thing.
Well, you always hope that your character has an arc of emotional growth. Because if that doesn't happen, then your character stays in the same place when you start your story. And so nothing really happens. So yeah, I'm always hoping my character will find a happy ending, because that's my goal for her, to find a happy ending.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's exactly, well, I can't say that, so I'll just nod since we're trying not to spoil. But it's interesting we brought up how you considered about Buddy Bright being more intricately involved, because my next question is kind of about small town journalism.
I don't think this one's a spoiler, right? So if you haven't already.
No, because I don't think so, because Sims meets his demise early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the novel.
Early, right?
Right. So I guess my question is kind of about small town journalism. And when Connolly was writing and investigating about Sims Robinette's death, she encountered a lot of pushback. You know, people were not pleased. So why were they against Connolly, and why do you think she chose, or why did you have her move forward with the story anyway?
Well, I think, you know, Sims Robinette was a community pillar of the community. He was somebody that brought jobs and money into the community. He had been in the community a long time. You know, it's like anybody. He was considered, you know, sort of an icon. And when you start asking questions about, gosh, does this man have a side of him that we didn't know about? What's going on with his family? When you start poking the bear, as it were, people are going to react, and they don't like their icons exposed as having anything other than what they want them to be. And you know that you see that in public life right now. And you know, I was really trying to make a point too about this idea that there is the fake mainstream media. Just because you don't like what the news is revealing doesn't mean it's a lie. And you know, and that happens a lot in small towns. People in small towns have the idea that the local newspaper is just supposed to, you know, run stories about the civic club meetings and the high school sports. And but when you start questioning what people perceive as the truth, then you get pushback. And I did research. I worked for small town papers before, and I did research for this book. I talked to the publishers of a small town weekly near Atlanta, and they talked to me about, you know, when they wrote a piece, it was a political scandal. People were outraged in the community, and the couple who owned the paper and run it, she said to me, you know, I would go to church and people would move away from my pew. You know, we would get crank calls. People would call up and cancel their subscriptions and threaten to withdraw their advertising. So it's a real thing. And I wanted to explore that.
Right. Okay.
That sounds great. That's
very good.
Definitely depicted in your book. We had one person to ask, and I think this is interesting for several of the names, but Sharon Person asked where you came up with the name Sims Robinette, because it sounds so perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I love to make up names for my characters. I think it goes back to when I was a little girl playing with dolls. My dolls always had names and they had stories, and I wanted it to have, you know, sound like an old family name. That's a big thing in the South. And so I played around with different combinations, and I kind of really liked Sims Robinette.
It sounds perfect. Michelle, do you see any other questions?
I'm seeing one from Sharon Person, who says, was Hello Summer an actual column name that you had seen, or did you make it up? It was actually my editor's idea. She said, I want you to write a book called Hello Summer, make it work.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of guidance.
So that's the name of, you know, Rowena Miggs is the society columnist for the Silver Bay Beacon. And she was inspired by the longtime society columnist at the Atlanta Constitution. I sat beside her when I went to work at the Atlanta paper many years ago, and she was a local institution. She was a kind of a dotty old lady, and lots of times she didn't get names right, and she definitely had an attitude about what was and wasn't newsworthy. And of course, with Rowena, I made Rowena a lot snarkier and made her more of a character. But the woman who inspired that character had been at the Atlanta paper so long. She had covered the premiere party for Gone with the Wind.
Wow. Oh,
wow.
Wow.
That is really interesting. I have just a quick question too, and then I think we'll go to Michelle's next thing. But that made me think. Was it difficult to write the actual stories that were within the book, the articles for the newspaper, because they sounded like articles you would write?
No, that was a lot of fun for me. I wrote for instance, the police roundup.
Yes.
That was fun because I used to write that. I used to write the police roundup when I worked at a weekly paper in the Atlanta area. I covered cops, and so I had a lot of fun with that, and also I wanted those stories. If you give them a careful read, you'll see that they lead into part of the mystery of how Sims Robinette dies.
That is awesome. It was a really interesting part of the book.
I just like this comment, so I'll share quickly.
Okay.
Meredith Anna says, haha, that's an interesting challenge. It's like a writing exercise to pick a random phrase and then use it at the beginning or first sentence of a story. So that was very good, thank you. Oh, a lot of people like Rowena. They enjoyed her character.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun. She was a lot of fun to write. Especially, I love when Connolly went to her house for coffee and she gave her Nescafe instant coffee. And then didn't give her any of the donuts that Connolly bought.
Oh yeah, that was good.
That's hilarious. That was another thing that I thought was really great, is that you wrote her columns in the novel, and they just flowed right into the plot of the story.
There are still weekly papers that have those kinds of columns, and that's what the society column looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, Michelle, did you have any others, or should I go ahead?
Is my next on the next question, or is it...
I think I have the next one. And it kind of changes our topic a little bit, because this one is about Toddy. Another fabulous name, by the way.
Yeah.
And this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear, I'm going to try not to make it a spoiler, but if you absolutely don't want to hear, go ahead and mute until you hear us, until you see Michelle talking. So Toddy is a very dynamic and interesting character in the novel. What did you think about the role she played, intentional or not, in her ex-husband's death? And go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and Mary Kay, why did you decide to portray Toddy the way you did?
Toddy started out being the sainted first wife who was done wrong. And, and I thought, at first I thought, okay, yeah, she was done wrong, and she's, a good person. And then the more I thought about her, I thought, she's had this simmering resentment all these years over the way Sims, basically ripped her off in the divorce, basically came to her and said, you take this settlement and you keep your mouth shut or you get nothing. Because he had, as so often happens in marriages, the man, if he's been the breadwinner, he has the gold and he has the rule. So I thought maybe she's not as good as I thought she was. Maybe when Sims knows he's terminal, his illness is terminal, he reaches out to her. He wants forgiveness, and he wants to finally do right by her. And when she has a chance, to strike back, she does. And I think she tells herself, I think she lies to herself. I think she told herself nothing bad would happen when she, gives him the alcohol that he requests. But she knows, absolutely knows, that something bad could happen. But she's one of those steel magnolias, you know, people, and she tells Connolly, people underestimate her.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to mention this one comment from Jane DeFries, which is kind of humorous. It's, I thought of Toddy as the saint, then the sinner at the end. What goes around comes around.
Yeah, yeah. There's plenty of, you know, when I was thinking about the end of that book, one thing I really was thinking about was a lot of people bear responsibility for what happened to Sims Robinette, and he, you know, he bore some responsibility for it too. So I didn't let him off the hook.
And that's right. There were so many people who had some share of that responsibility. There was plenty to go around.
Well, you know, with that, I was really thinking about I'm an Agatha Christie fan, and I was thinking about Murder on the Orient Express. If you know that book, you know that everybody on that train had not one person killed the victim. Each person had a little bit of responsibility for that.
That's interesting.
There is some debate in the chat box about whether she really played, whether her role was intentional or not intentional, or whether she just didn't think about it.
I think she saw an opportunity and took it. I don't think she plotted it. I don't think it was malice aforethought, but you know, when a woman's been wrong, that can simmer that resentment can simmer for a really long time.
That is the truth.
Didn't see that happen.
Let's see, are we ready for Michelle?
Yes. So
our next question for the group.
Yeah. So this is also again a little bit of a spoiler question.
So mute those mics if you don't want to hear, just in case.
Thank you. What did you think of the dramatic scene towards the end of the novel of Connolly, Buddy Bright, and Popple? Were you surprised by this? And were you surprised by the secrets that both Buddy Bright and Popple were keeping? And Mary Kay, did you have this dramatic development planned, or did the characters take over?
You know, I knew that the first time the cop showed up in the story, I knew he was a bad guy. And I knew he was stalking Connolly. And actually, at first, I thought it was Buddy Bright that was stalking Connolly. And then I figured out, no, it's the cop. And Buddy Bright is watching this happen. And towards the end of the book, when things started to come to a head, it's the ending of the book was a really hard, I sort of think of it as choreography, because you have a lot of story threads coming together and you're trying to, you know, weave everything together and tie up loose ends. So that was a really tricky scene to write.
I'll bet it was. As a reader, it sort of seemed to come out of nowhere. Which I think probably other folks will agree. We'll see. Oh, Diane Housel says, me too. I did not like the cop.
Yeah, he I did not know about his past, and but Skelly knew about it, and I think it's true to form that sometimes, especially in small towns, athletes are let off the hook. People make excuses for them and they get away with stuff. Right. And I think that speaks a lot to what you see happening currently. men who, as boys, people let them off the hook and say, well, it was just, boys will be boys. And when boys are boys and they get away with that, then, things can really get out of hand.
Right.
Absolutely. Diane Housel again says that she loved all the different threads of the story, going back to how it evolved and there were so many different layers.
Well, I appreciate that. I really thought writing this book, I told my friends, Patty Henry, especially one of the other friends and fiction gals, and Mary Alice Monroe, we were on a writing retreat together, and I told them this book will end my career.
Oh no.
Oh.
And look at that New York Times bestseller out of the gate.
Well, I think it maybe it's because I'm a woman and a mom and a grandmother now. Lots of times I think of the process of finishing a book as literally like birthing a baby. And I can remember hearing stories about the more difficult the labor, the better the kid will end up. I don't know if that's true or not, but this was not an easy labor, I'll tell you that. Oh, Kristen Harmel is on. Hey, Kristen.
Yes, she's here. And yeah, I saw her comment. She said hello to all of us.
Yes, hello. We're just transitioning to the reader portion, asking Mary Kay questions for this evening. So she has perfect timing.
Great timing. Yeah.
To enjoy that aspect. Well, let's see, we're at 7:35. I wanted to share one more question, and while people are putting their questions in the chat box, well, no, I better go ahead and do that, and I'll save that for the end. So, Sherry Kuhn asked, do you think you'll write a Hello Summer series? I could definitely see Connolly getting into some more adventures.
Well, I never think a book will end up a series. For instance, when I wrote Savannah Blues, I didn't know that would be a 4-book series. But yeah, now that I look back on it, I think sure, lots of things can happen in a small town. And of course, there were some issues that Connolly really didn't get to pay as much attention to, as, for instance, the toxic waste, the cancer cluster.
Yes.
Nearby. I can tell you that next summer's book is not a follow-up to Hello Summer. It's a completely new set of characters and a completely different setting, although it is a Florida setting, I'll tell you that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That brings up one of the questions Judy Hine asked. Did you have input into the cover of Hello Summer, and how apropos to have the sparkles on the sandals and the sand on the beach?
I like that. Yeah.
They send me, the art director sends me the mock-ups of the cover, and I do have approval, but I didn't realize they were going to do the textured sparkly sand stuff until I got my author copies. That was a total surprise. So I have input and we talk a lot about it, but really the art director does a great job of, I think, giving my books a cover that makes you want it. That's the plan. The plan is for you to see that online or in a bookstore and say, I gotta have it. It's like candy.
Jane DeFries asked, if you don't plot out a story, how did you keep so many threads going at one time without getting confused?
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
Who says I didn't get confused? I write longhand in a composition book when I'm plotting, and I have finally got to the point where I write a Bible, and the Bible basically just says, here's who the characters are, here's how old they are, here's a little bit about their background. And it's I wish I was somebody that could outline and storyboard and all those things, but my mind just doesn't work that way. I think I'm I think I'm more than a tad ADD.
Well, you certainly kept a lot of balls in the air. Karen Krinsky wants to know, and I want to know, how do you pronounce what I'm going to guess is G Mama?
Yes, G Mama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. People were asking that.
Yeah, I'd seen that earlier. Yeah, it's G Mama.
Okay.
Or grandmama.
Yeah.
Okay. And were you a cutthroat reporter like Connolly?
Not really. I always give my characters superpowers that I don't have. So they're braver than me and smarter than me and sexier than me and definitely younger than me. I did do some investigative reporting, but my problem is I don't like confrontation.
Me neither.
Me neither.
Yeah, I know. My daughter says, Mom, you don't even stand up for yourself. I do. But no, I gave Connolly superpowers that I don't have.
Well, they must be in there somewhere because you allowed Connolly to do that great investigative work. Meredith Anna asked, and this is, I think, a good question. You said Buddy and Rowena were inspired by real life people. Were any others?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah, Lillian King, the office manager receptionist. When I worked at the Atlanta Constitution, our receptionist in the features department was a Black woman named Lillian King. And Lillian is no longer with us, but she was very much the inspiration for the character of Lillian King, telling Connolly, take your own messages. And then Michael Torpy, his character was a tribute to this part is kind of bittersweet. There's a wonderful columnist at the Atlanta Constitution. His name is Bill Torpy, and his children went to the same school that my children and grandchildren attend. It's a little parochial school nearby. And a year ago, Michael, who was I think he was a sophomore in college, he had bone cancer, and he died of bone cancer. But he was redheaded and freckled and tall and skinny. I never met Michael, but I read about him. His dad wrote these beautiful columns about losing him. And so when I started, I knew I was going to have an upstart right out of college hotshot reporter. And it seemed to me that he could be Michael Torpy. So I actually emailed Bill and asked him if it would be okay as sort of a tribute if I name that character after his son. And it's been nice. He tells me occasionally, oh, so-and-so called up and said, did I know that our son was a character in your book?
Nice.
Oh, that is nice.
Okay. Oh, I have a question from Erin Fraser. When and how did you decide on Winnie's story?
I had read a story, a beautifully done story in Atlanta Magazine about 2 years ago about a cancer cluster down in Waycross, Georgia. And the water and soil there had been contaminated by runoff from a railroad storage facility. And that story just really moved me. And I did more research, and I found several other cancer clusters around the South. There were a couple in Alabama, and one of them was caused by toxic waste generated by a power plant. And so Winnie is sort of the conscience of the book. And I knew that I would write about that.
Very good. And another question, because I see a few people were asking this. This one's from Karen Krinsky.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, they keep on asking who are the three voices the neighbor heard.
Yeah, that's what we call a red herring. When the old lady tells tells Connolly that she thought it was drunks coming back from the bar. It actually was drunks coming back from the bar.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting.
Oh, somebody says that it reminded them of Aaron Brockovich's story.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it at the time, but yeah.
Mhm. Let's see, anything else? Oh, here's another good question from Windsor Kitchens. Was surprised at the trauma Connolly had when her father died. How do you decide on an idea?
I knew that there was a reason, an underlying reason that Connolly had never dealt with about her reluctance to go home. But I couldn't figure out what it was. And I knew that she really adored her father and was close to him. And I kept wondering, you know, what was the cause of her really fleeing her hometown and never going back except for very short periods of time. The only, she goes back for a very short period of time after her father dies and then doesn't come back again. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought about her father, he sort of faded away bit by bit after her mom took off until, as she says, there was almost nothing left of him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep, several people had comments. I think that struck a chord with a lot of your readers, that the story of the cancer clusters definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and unfortunately, these toxic waste dumps are so often in neighborhoods where people are, are low income and they can't really fight for themselves. They don't really have a voice in what happens. Mm-hmm. And I think my old reporter's instincts always are to sympathize with the underdogs.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it.
I have a question from Joe Malia. Do you have a favorite character in the book, Mary Kay?
Oh, Rowena was a lot of fun to write. I'll say that. I could hear her voice when I was writing her dialogue, and it occurred to me today that her voice sounds like Fanny Flagg, if those people remember.
Fanny Flagg.
Fanny Flagg, is from Alabama and has that great southern voice. So yeah, and I love to write about old ladies, cranky old ladies. They're my favorite thing to write.
Brittany Thomas asked, can you give us any hints on next year's book?
I can tell you that it is set at a mom and pop motel in Florida, and a woman arrives there with a very big secret.
That's it?
I guess that's all we're getting now.
That's all we're getting.
Well, I am incredibly superstitious. I think maybe it's because I'm Irish. We're very superstitious people. And I'm superstitious about revealing too much about a book I haven't finished. Besides, I mean, things could change. Mm-hmm. I'm about halfway done with it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So Judy Hines says Rowena equals Fanny Flagg. Love it. Again, oops, I lost it. That's not. Her blonde coiffure is an architectural marvel.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's really based on Yolande Gwynn, who was the inspiration for that character.
Mm.
I'd like to take a moment, if I could, to ask a question that was submitted in advance, but I think it's really interesting. Shelby Henderson had asked on our group page, which, by the way, we hit 1,000 members this weekend.
Yeah, about that. Right.
Very exciting. But she says, my hometown newspaper just stopped publishing their weekly edition after almost 100 years.
Yeah.
I often think of Facebook as the local gossip column that was published for so many years. What do you foresee in the future for print newspapers? And is there a way to save our small town papers?
Well, I certainly hope there is a way to save them. And I think one way is print may not be a sustainable model long-term for newspapers that aren't the New York Times or the Washington Post. But I think newspapers, if they can figure out a way to remain absolutely vital and viable, if they can do an online paper, then they have more flexibility. They can, write breaking news and updates online. But the big thing they have to do is figure out a way to monetize it, because journalism, good journalism especially, costs money. You have to pay reporters and photographers. And of course, I'm a big believer in journalism. I subscribe to 5 different papers. I get the print edition daily of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, my alma mater. I have an online subscription, digital subscription to my hometown paper, the Tampa Bay Times. I subscribe to the digital and weekend edition of the New York Times, and then digital edition of the Washington Post. So, that I honestly think if newspapers are going to have to figure out how to do digital and make themselves just absolutely irreplaceable to their community.
Mm-hmm.
They are such an important part of the community. I still have a local paper that's published 2 times a week.
Well, you're very lucky.
Yes, I am very lucky, but it was so neat that you wove that into the novel as well, because communities without newspapers are not going to be as sustainable.
Yeah, and then if you don't have somebody, a watchdog, for instance, covering city council meetings, covering utility meetings, then that's when bad things happen. The saying is that democracy dies in darkness, and that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have another question. It says from Judy Winters, if this was made into a movie, who would play the main characters?
I'm terrible at casting stuff. I don't even know. I'm going to let you all decide that. Maybe
post in the comments.
Yeah, maybe some of you can decide who should play Connolly and who should play Skelly. And we've already decided Fanny Flagg should play Rowena, so we got that part.
Yeah,
we've got that part.
Thumbs up on that one. That's funny. While we're waiting for those characters to roll in, Meredith says, I love that. Newspapers do play such a vital role. I hope people realize that, especially the smaller ones, or where there are news deserts, which I thought was interesting because I think of food deserts, but not news deserts.
It's interesting.
Absolutely true.
Let's see, do we have anybody submitting?
Not yet.
Actors. I'm terrible at that too.
So okay, here we go. It says, Haley says, Blake Lively, good Connolly.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I like that. Anybody else?
Oh, Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'd be great.
Yeah.
If only somebody here knew Reese Witherspoon and tell her to buy the rights to Hello Summer.
Right? Oh, that would be great. Anybody else?
No ideas for Grayson or
Scully
or even Michael Torpy.
Yeah.
You need a great Michael Torpy.
Yeah. Somebody think Clint Eastwood's son, Scott Eastwood.
Yeah. Right. That's what Cherie said. Oh, Connie said Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson.
Oh, they're both too old now.
Yeah.
They've aged out.
That's really funny. Well, I cannot believe it, but it is just about time for us to end our first book club with the Friends in Fiction book club Monday evenings. I hope that we will be able to get some more questions answered on the book club page, and we really appreciate our authors for doing that for us. Are there any things that you would like to leave the readers with, Mary Kay?
Just that I hope, of course, I want people to read Hello Summer, and if they haven't read last year's book, Sunset Beach, I think they would enjoy it. And remember our independent booksellers. During this pandemic, so many of them have suffered, so many independent businesses, restaurants, bars and shops who are small, independently owned, are really hurting. And so I always hope that people will support independent booksellers, and we've had lots of them. You can find lots of them on the Friends in Fiction page. And keep asking questions, keep posting them. I'll come on and answer them. And I love this community of readers. It's much fun for all of us authors, that knowing that you're out there and that you love books and care about them. That really means a lot to us.
Thank you so much,
so
and to
much.
all the authors.
Yeah. So I just going to say a few things. Again, thank you everybody for attending our first ever book club discussion. I feel like it went very well, and thank you for your support, and so happy with the attendance that we have. We hope you all had a wonderful time tonight. And just to let you know, our next book discussion will be Kristen Harmel's book on Monday, August 17th at 7 p.m. to discuss a new book coming out tomorrow, Book of Lost Names. If you're interested in buying the Book of Lost Names, you can get an autographed copy by ordering it between now and Saturday from the Friends in Fiction Bookstore of the Week, an indie bookstore, Writer's Block in Winter Park, Florida. Plus, if you use the coupon code FriendsFiction, all one word capitalized, between now and Saturday, you'll get 10% off any of the Friends in Fiction authors' new releases. Plus, you'll be entered to win one of 20 CDs from the band Sister Hazel. We'll be special guests on Friends in Fiction this week. We'll post a link and coupon code on the book club page. So this is a great way to get a copy of this new book, which should prove to be a hit like our other books, and support an indie bookstore. And also, if you haven't read some of Mary Kay's more recent books, as she said, like Sunset Beach, you can get that one as well. And again, everyone have a good night, and hope to see you on the Wednesday night Friends in Fiction chat at 7 and our Zoom chat, book club chat at 8 p.m.
Thanks so much, Mary Kay, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Yes.
Good night, everybody. This was
Good night.
Thanks again.
Thanks again, yes.
On the Wednesday night Friends in Fiction chat at 7 and our Zoom chat, book club chat at 8 p.m.
Thanks so much, Mary.
Okay, I'm trying to end us. Oh, there we go.